And so I decided to give exercise a try, and I remember my first time trying to do a push-up in front of all the guys in jail. I collapsed, couldn't do one for my feet, couldn't even do one for my knees, and I looked at my cellmate and I said, like, why can't I do it? And he very politely said, because you're fat.
Welcome to the Mastering Diabetes audio experience, where we'll teach you how to reverse insulin resistance, achieve your ideal body weight, gain energy, and get your best A1C following almost 100 years of evidence-based research.
We're on a bold mission to reverse insulin resistance in 1 million people. We're glad to have you joining us.
Welcome to the Mastering Diabetes audio experience. We got a great show for you today. Today we're going to be interviewing two people. The first one is Doug Bopst, and the second one is Adam Sudd, your very own coach for Mastering Diabetes. Now, Doug is an award-winning personal trainer. He's the author of 3 books and the host of the Adversity Advantage podcast. And he is on a crusade to inspire others to overcome adversity and become the best version of themselves. Now, Doug himself is a former convicted felon and a former drug addict who spent time in jail for possession with the intent to sell. Now, while locked up in his prison cell, he refers to himself as slaying his personal demons. He kicked addiction completely, he reinvented himself, and he used fitness as his primary tool. Since that time, he's appeared on The Today Show, Men's Health, Forbes, The Rich Roll podcast, Impact Theory, Bulletproof Radio, and beyond. Doug is a force for good. He's very knowledgeable, and he has a message of true inspiration for everyone listening today. In addition to that, we have Adam Sudd, your very own coach for Mastering Diabetes. Now, Adam himself has a phenomenal story about overcoming his addictive behavior from early in life, when he found himself to be addicted to fast food, selling drugs on the street, and he had gained a significant amount of weight. He was 320 pounds. He developed type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, and he was on a number of different pharmaceutical medications to also help him calm anxiety and treat ADHD. Adam himself went to rehab and transformed his life completely from the inside out using a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. If you haven't heard Adam's story before, you're in for a real treat today. And if you haven't heard Doug Bopst's story before, you're in for a real treat today as well. The common thread that unites all of this conversation here for people here living with diabetes is that, you may not be able to identify with serving jail time or being a convicted felon. I get it. Neither can I. It's not something that, I've ever dealt with, and therefore it doesn't necessarily have as much value to the diabetes community. But today's conversation is about something that's related to that, but not directly, that's not focused necessarily on prison or recovery. It's about the mental and psychological tricks that every one of us can play. Tricks is the wrong word. It's about the psychological transformation that can occur inside of your own head and inside of your own body when you begin to recognize that the inner critic inside of you may actually be holding you back from achieving your goals, whether those goals are earning more money, getting a new job, having better interpersonal relationships, or, in this situation, reversing chronic disease. So we're going to get way deep into the psychological, insights of how you can transform your physical body by first transforming your thought process. It's a fascinating episode. I really hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get right into it. I can't even tell you guys how excited I am for today's conversation. I feel like there's so many nuggets of gold that are going to be coming out of this conversation here about compulsive behavior and lifestyle change. And I am actually honored to have both of you here. So Doug Bopst, Adam Sudd, welcome to the Mastering Diabetes audio experience. How you doing today, Doug?
Cyrus, it's good to be here, man. And by the way, it's Bopst. It's all good though.
See, I'm already messing it up. Jeez, it's ridiculous.
It's all right. I had to hear your name 17 times before I announced it on my podcast. So it's all good.
I love it. I love it. And we got Adam Sudd. How you doing, Adam?
I'm good, man. This is gonna be great. I'm excited to be here co-hosting my first interview ever. First time I've ever interviewed somebody else. Not my first interview of me, but first time I've ever helped interview someone else. So this is exciting. Well, I'm glad that it's Doug.
I'm glad it's you, man.
We get to flip the script today here. Okay.
Yeah.
So today's conversation is going to be actually a very eye-opening conversation for 1,000 different reasons. But One of the reasons that both Adam and I wanted to have Doug on the show today is because Doug has a tremendous story about recognizing that he had addictive tendencies from a young age, going to jail, becoming a felon, and then finding his way to lifestyle change and completely transforming his life using fitness. I don't want to steal your story, Doug. You tell your story better than anyone else. So why don't we start by you educating our listeners here about, what happened to you prior to this conversation?
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm honored to be on the show with both of you. And what's interesting is you've both been on my show called the Adversity Advantage podcast, and today I'm a personal trainer. I've been a trainer for over a decade. I've written 3 books. I'm a speaker, and I'm in recovery from addiction for almost 13 years. And with all that said, it wasn't long ago that my life was a complete mess. It was in shambles, and I was incarcerated on felony drug charges back in 2008. And as I look back at why that happened, essentially I was using adversity to my disadvantage. And when I was in jail, I was suicidal. I had a horrific opiate addiction. I was snorting like 400 milligrams of Oxycontin every single day up my nose, spending hundreds of dollars a day. I was a convicted felon because I was selling tons of pot to not only support my habit, but to also make money. And I was 50, 60 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was over fat, and not just over fat physically. I was over fat mentally. I was over fat spiritually. I was over fat emotionally. And I was just completely bankrupt on every single level. And what many would think would be one of my greatest setbacks ever ended up becoming the biggest blessing in my life, and here's why. I cried the day I went into jail, as many people would, as many people can imagine, because all the fears anybody has about going to jail, they were running through my mind, because I was out of shape, I was addicted to drugs, I had tons of brain fog, I had anxiety, I had depression, you name it, I had it. And then on top of all of that, I had a horrific opiate addiction to kick. So I walk into the gates of the local detention center, and I detoxed cold turkey off of the Oxy for the first few weeks I was in there. And for anybody who's listening to this, who's maybe you've experienced it, maybe you haven't experienced it, it's like having the worst case of the flu possible every single day. Uncontrollable bowel movements, uncontrollable vomiting, sleepless nights, anxiety, depression, aches and pains, like everything. But the hardest part for me then was it felt like that I was trying to crawl out of my own skin. And as I look back now, I believe it was the old me trying to leave my body so that the new me could become new and become whole. And my soon-to-be cellmate was sitting there at the Scrabble table when I was in jail, and he looked at me and he was just like, what are you doing here? And him and I had, we exchanged, a few words, and he was just like, you're going to start working out with me at the end of your detox. Because he could tell my shoulders were rounded forward. I talked very quiet. He just knew that I lacked confidence. And I was like, whatever, man. Like at the time, I could have been a model for Pillsbury. And then shortly after, I saw him work out. And he was like a more jacked version of Brad Pitt from Fight Club is how I like to describe him.
Wow.
And I saw him work out. He's doing thousands of push-ups. He's tons of pull-ups, running in the jail. And he's still to this day one of the fittest guys I've ever seen. And I was just like, man, who is this guy? And a couple nights later, or a couple days later, whatever it was, we were in the cell, and he was asking me more about my story. And when I was explaining about my story, I was blaming all the adversities in my life for why I was in jail. I was blaming my parents' divorce when I was 5. I was blaming being bullied. I was blaming abuse. I was blaming the fact that I was cut from sports teams or rejected by girls. I didn't have a girlfriend in high school, in grade school at all. It was crazy. And he looked at me, and I'll just give it the PG version. He was just like, quit being a wuss, quit being a victim. You chose to respond to those situations to get yourself here. He's like, there's plenty of people that go through what you went through that aren't in jail, right? And I'm like, yeah. And as much as it wasn't what I wanted to hear in that moment, it was what I needed to hear. Because for the first time in my life, I kind of had somebody who really didn't have any skin in the game as far as my life just show me some sense of unconditional love, unconditional wisdom, and really telling me what I needed to hear in that moment. And it invigorated me. I felt empowered because, Cyrus and Adam, here's the thing. When people don't feel empowered, they're never going to make a change. That's what happens, is so many people don't have the confidence in themselves. They don't have the awareness. They don't have the strength. They don't have the wisdom to be able to take that first step to make that change. And for the first time in my life, or the first time in a long while, the brain fog was kind of gone, if you will, where I wasn't under the influence of any substance, and I was able to look back and say, up until this point, I've had 21 jobs by the time I was 21. I'm a convicted felon. I'm in jail. I have broken relationships, all these negative things. So clearly I don't know what I'm doing. So I was like, maybe I'm going to listen to this guy. And so I decided to give exercise a try, and I remember my first time trying to do a push-up in front of all the guys in jail. I collapsed, couldn't do one for my feet, couldn't even do one for my knees, and I looked at my cellmate and I said, why can't I do it? And he very politely said, because you're fat. And I was just like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. He's like, your core is weak, you have tons of belly fat, you can't hold yourself up to do a push-up, so your core is weak, so you can't hold yourself up to do a push-up, and your body's collapsing. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. And I hated that word fat. I hated being called it. It was like, it triggered something in me that I can't even describe. And I swore I'd never be called that word ever again. And he decided to train me in there during my 90-day sentence. And but we set some goals. Like, my goals back then were to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile by the time I left my 90-day sentence. And with his motivation and inspiration and encouragement, training me in there every single day, I was able to do it. I was able to turn that one push-up into 2, into 3, into 4, because I could barely also walk up and down the steps, keep in mind, because I was smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes every single day before I went in there. And so I was able to do the set of 10 push-ups. I was able to run that mile. And I finally felt this light bulb go off in my head that I was ready to beat addiction. I was ready to change my life. I was actually ready to finally do the thing I knew I wanted, which was to take care of myself, to stop beating myself up mentally, to stop beating myself up emotionally, stop beating myself up spiritually, and actually make those changes that I've been wanting to make for years. And so the day I left, I cried. Because I was like, how am I ever going to repay you? To my cellmate, I was like, how am I going to essentially be able to carry this forward? And he just said to me, he's like, don't mess up and pay it forward. And I didn't really know what paying it forward meant. I never read a personal development book in my life, so I was just like, all right, man, whatever. And he gave me a workout plan that I still have framed in my place today, so never forget where I came from. And again, I cried when I left because I just felt like my life was changed. I literally felt like the old me died in jail, and the new me was literally reborn in a weird way, right? And got out, stayed on the workout plan he gave me, lost 50 pounds, and then got certified as a trainer to help other people use fitness to change their lives. So I've been a trainer now for over 10 years, as I said when we started this conversation, and since building my training business. Some amazing things have happened. The felony ended up coming off my record at the end of the 5 years of probation that I was on. They changed it to a PBJ. Now it's actually completely expunged as of last year. I've written 3 books. I wrote my first book, From Felony to Fitness to Free. I wrote my second book, Faith, Family, Fitness, and my third book, The Heart of Recovery, which Adam was featured in. And I've been able to share my story on so many amazing platforms and start my podcast and interview some amazing people along the way, and have been in recovery ever since. And that's kind of like the short, like probably the most condensed version of my story I've ever told. And for those that want to hear a more in-depth version, I know many people listening to this or watching to this probably also listen or watch Rich Roll's podcast or Simon Hill's Plant Proof podcast, and I went really in depth on both of their shows on my story, like 2-hour interviews. If you want to check it out there. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes that we're going to get caught in here today because there's so much juice in what you just said. But before we get there, Adam, why don't you refamiliarize our audience with your condensed story as well? Because you and Doug actually have a lot in common, and that's one of the beauties of having you together here.
Yeah, so my story started in 2012, and in 2012 I was at the tail end of a 10-year battle with substance abuse disorder. I weighed around 350 pounds at the time, did not know that I had diabetes and heart disease, did know I had erectile dysfunction. I was also dealing with extreme substance abuse for not just opiates and stimulants, but also fast food. And I was just living in a constant state of pain, right? Physically, spiritually, emotionally, very similar to what Doug was saying, that, life just seemed to, it was almost as if life was requesting that I no longer be a part of it. And I was more than willing to accept that request on a daily basis because trying was too hard. And on August 21st of 2012, I attempted suicide by overdose. Luckily survived that. Best failure of my life. And as a result, checked myself into treatment, where I found out that I had advanced type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, erectile dysfunction, diagnosed with multiple psychological disorders, put on cabinets worth of medication. And luckily, about a year before that, had the opportunity to hear about plant-based diet and its potential to reverse disease. And like what Doug was saying, when this guy was, telling him what to do and how to do it and everything, and he's like, I'm just going to do what this guy says. It was basically like, my best thinking and best plans for life got me to the point to where I tried to end my life by suicide and ended up in a mental institution for substance abuse disorder. That was doing the best I could. Maybe I don't know how to do that, and maybe that's okay, because it gives me the opportunity to just say, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know any other way to do it. Here's an opportunity to learn how to do it better, and I'm just going to do what they say without question. And so my do what they say without question was a plant-based diet. And I adopted that way of living. And as a result, I reversed my diabetes, heart disease, and erectile dysfunction within 4 months. Lost about 180 pounds over the course of a year or so. Got off of every single medication, including all my psych meds. And I'll be celebrating 9 years of continued sobriety in October of this year. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow, it's really been 9 years at this point now, huh?
9 years, man. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I mean, I love joking around about the fact that you are now half the man that you used to be, like physically speaking. You used to be 320 pounds, now you're 160 pounds.
Well, I'm 175 now, Cyrus.
Oh, no, you're 125. That's right. You've been putting on some muscle.
Putting on some muscle these days.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the direction that I like to take this conversation here is about, people who are living with diabetes, hypertension, some version of heart disease, chronic kidney disease, Alzheimer's disease, some version or collection of chronic diseases. They may not identify with either one of your stories as being, a complete addict or having gone to jail or, dealing drugs. But what they can associate with is the fact that when you're consumed mentally with one focus, sometimes it's hard to even see the light on the other side. In other words, when you're living with some kind of chronic disease and you really want to reverse it, but life gets in the way. Maybe you're too busy. Maybe you're not sleeping properly. It can almost seem like a pipe dream if somebody were to tell you that reversing chronic disease is even possible, right? And it might seem like, oh my God, like there's no way I can even get to that right now because the rest of my life is sort of like weighing me down, right? So let's focus on the psychological aspects of how to get from where you currently are, if you feel like the world is weighing down on you, to the next step in the puzzle where you can actually start to make some forward progress leading towards a reversal of diabetes or any other chronic disease.
I mean, I can only speak from my own personal experience, and I think you really have to get clear on like a deep why, and like why you're making that change. Because when it comes to weight loss, I've been a trainer now for a long time, and most people don't want to lose weight. They want to feel better when they look in the mirror, right? So if you can really get clear on that deep why and develop some emotional connection into whatever it is you're trying to achieve, like for instance, if it's somebody that says, hey, I need to lose 30 pounds, then ask why. Like, why do I want to lose that 30 pounds? Well, maybe it's because I want to fit better in my clothes. Or why do you care about fitting better in your clothes? Well, because I want to make sure that I kind of look good when I'm around my friends. And it's like, well, why do you care the way you look around your friends? And then somebody might say something like, because I come home and I bawl my eyes out and I cry because I'm embarrassed by the way I look compared to my friends who take care of themselves. Then you get some emotional connection there. And then you can kind of like somehow connect that with your goals and where you want to go to make it more worth the while, right? Because if you're just saying, oh, I just want to lose 30 pounds, like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's surface level. So you got to get like underneath of that. And then start small. I cannot tell you how many people, when they want to lose weight, when they want to beat addiction, when they want to make any kind of change in their life, they go after these massive goals. And it's not to say that you can't have, you shouldn't, it's not to say that you can't have a goal to lose 100 pounds or you can't have this, but you got to focus on losing that first pound first. So what do? So you break it down. You break down the micro into the macro into micro, and then from the micro, super micro. And it all comes down to how you make the most out of that 24 hours that you're living. So, for instance, if you know what you need to do, this is the last thing I'll say, and Adam, I'll let you kind of chime in. Like, if you know what you need to do on a daily basis to hopes to give you a chance to lose the weight or beat diabetes or beat addiction, like, what are those things you need to do on a daily basis? And be relentless and meticulous about sticking to those things every single day. Just focus on that one day, like literally that one day, and it'll give you a chance to get to where you want to go. But a lot of people do the opposite. They look at this massive goal and they say, screw it. Like, there's no point. Like, I'm never going to get there, because they just see this huge like mountain of weight they have to lose or obstacle in the way, and they don't even know where to start. So focus on taking it one day, being relentless about that one day, and stack those days, because what'll happen is you'll get one day under your belt, 2 days, 3 days, and you look back and you'll have like 2 weeks under your belt of changing your habits and your behaviors. You'll lose some weight, you'll feel better, and you're like, wow, how did this all happen? And it just started with that one day.
Yeah, I really agree with what he said about, your why being where it has to start. And, there's the way I like to say it is, in order to truly care for something, you have to care about it, right? Caring for yourself is a response. It's a response to caring about yourself, not the other way around, right? You don't care about something because you care for it. You care for it because you care about it. And it's called self-care for a reason. People don't care about their diabetes. They don't care about their obesity or their hypertension or their high cholesterol. Those are the negative consequences. And what those negative consequences are doing is they are threatening what is truly meaningful and loving in yourself and in your life. That is what is so important about understanding what those negative consequences are. Like, there's this misconception about why it's rock bottom is such a motivator, right? And everyone thinks it's because this is the point where you can't hate yourself anymore, or this is the point where you can't hate your life anymore. And I really think that what rock bottom is in reality, it's the point in time where you're presented front and center the invariable truth that everything that really matters to you can be taken away immediately if change doesn't happen. Not the negative things being so bad, but what is truly meaningful in your life, about yourself, the people that you share your life with, the value that you have the opportunity to share with those maybe today or in the future, the community of shared respect that you were once a part of, and that future that you saw at one point in your life that has been taken by the disconnection that's created. Those meaningful things, they are now threatened greater than ever before. And this is why rock bottom is such a beautiful thing, because it gets you to focus on the loving why about yourself. You care for your body by exercising or healing or feeding it healing foods as a way to celebrate what your body does for you, right? About its ability to care for you, its ability to heal you. This is what it wants to do. It makes no sense that there's any biological organism on the planet whose body is not always constantly doing its best for you. The recognition that maybe you've misinterpreted what's happening. Maybe you saw your body as your adversary for your whole life. I sure did. Right? Maybe you saw your body as an enemy that was out to get you your whole life. I sure did. But surviving suicide was the ultimate expression of a body that said, we have always been taking care of you since the day you were born. We have been fighting for you since the day you were born. And everyone who's listening to this call has a body that's doing the same thing. Maybe you just haven't learned that truth yet. And when you adopt a mindset that your body is your partner, it's your ally in life, then choices become very specific and very clear. how do I best nurture and take care of a body that is always doing the same for me? And then you can become very clear and very, very specific about the direction that you want to go. And then choices aren't right or wrong at that point. They're not good or bad. They're not healthy or unhealthy. They're either aligned or they're not. They're aligned with how you want to care for your body or they're not. They're aligned with how you want to take care of your body or they're not. The pressure is removed. And when your body is your ally, what do you do if you were in a situation where you needed an ally and your ally shows up? What do you do for your ally? You make sure that ally is equipped with everything it needs. If you're facing an adversary, what do? You try to take from it as much as possible. A restriction mindset happens when you view your body as your enemy and adversary. An abundance mindset happens when you view your body as your ally and your partner. And I think that when in recovery more so than anything, and certainly in health and lifestyle change, we'll just call it all the same thing, that truth, fully living in that truth of saying, my body is not trying to hurt me. I am not trying to win a battle against my body on the scale. I'm trying to help my body show up for me so that today it's easier to move. So that today I can do 2 push-ups instead of 1. I want to give my body what it can so that when I get up, my body's like, watch what we can do today, boy. This is going to be amazing.
Okay, so this is great. So how does somebody, practically speaking, identify exactly what their why is? I mean, is it, as you guys are talking about this, I'm just picturing myself like going to a mountaintop and sitting in lotus position and trying to summon the God to try and teach me what it is that my why. But practically speaking, how does somebody actually identify that? Does it require like a lot of deep thought? Do they start writing things down in a journal, or is there some other more?
I think that it's about, and I'll let Doug answer in more detail. Is that it's the things that bring you joy, plain and simple. It's the thing, and they don't have to be this deep thing, right? It's the people that you want to be around the most, right? It's the things you want to be engaged in the most. Maybe you haven't been in a long time, or maybe you never have before, but you've always wanted to, right? It's the community that you want to be a part of the most. It's the things that when you see them, they bring you joy.
Yeah, I think having a why can change based on what you're trying to achieve. I think specifically in the weight loss community as a trainer, what I've learned is some of the whys are, I want to make sure I'm not spending, tons of money on medical bills when I'm in retirement, or I want to be able to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to be able to keep up with my kids when they're playing sports. I want to be able to be around for my grandkids or great grandkids. I want to be able to still kind of hang out and play golf with my friends. Like whatever it is, you get a deep question, or you start to ask these deeper questions. They say deep. It's not really that deep. You're just specifically asking like one word, why? Like, why is it important to you? And I say that because most people don't even know why they're doing something. They see something on TV, or they see something on social media, or they read something in a magazine. They're like, oh, that looks cool. I'll just do that. Or I'll follow this diet, or I'll do this approach, or I'll lose weight because I think it's the right thing to do. But why is it the right thing to do? Why is it the right thing for you to do? Like, why do you really want to do it? Because I think you have to attach you have to attach emotion to the behavior you're trying to change, right? Or the habits you're trying to change. And Adam touched on choices, and he's right. There's no like good or bad, healthy or unhealthy choice when it comes to the ones you make. It's just you have to make sure that they're aligned with the future version of yourself, or that person you're trying to become. But I will say there's a lot of other choices that do matter in some capacity if you're trying to lose weight. If you're trying to be healthier, it comes down to the people you surround yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with a bunch of pessimistic people? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are eating like crap all the time? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are constantly making fun of you or shaming you for your goals? Because that's going to lower your mood. It's going to make you more upset. It's going to stress you out. It's going to bring you down. And then maybe indirectly, you'll make poorer decisions from that than you would have if you were surrounding yourself with people that brought the best out in you. I think it also comes down to like, what are you watching on TV? Are you staring at the news all day long? Or are you listening to podcasts? Or are you scrolling on social media? There's so many other things I think that go into weight loss than just the food. Because I don't think nutrition is just what you eat. It's what you watch. It's what you listen to. It's what you see. It's what you write down. Like all that stuff I think comes into somebody trying to make a lifestyle change.
Yeah, you actually hit this on the head because during COVID, during 2020, when we were all in lockdown, I remember thinking to myself over and over and over and again that social media and the news had just become completely overwhelming. Because every single time I turned something on, whether it was a news channel, whether it was Instagram, Facebook, you name it, it was just like this doomsday story, and it was like one version after another, after another, after another. And I remember telling myself, this is depressing. I'm not interested. Of course, I care about what's happening in the world, but I cannot participate in this right now because it's actually making me a more unhappy person. So as a result of that, I had to distance myself from that because I was becoming a product of my own environment. And that environment had to change in order for me to actually change my thought process. So I love what you just said, Doug, about the fact that like you have to change, who you're hanging out with, what you're thinking about, what types of communication you're having with other people, because all that stuff matters. It absolutely matters.
Yeah. One of the things I'll tell people is the first thing I did was, look, when I started my journey, 9 years ago, I certainly did not have the knowledge that I have today about lifestyle change, about behavior change. But what I knew the number one thing that I needed to do, and I kept hearing over and over again, was environment. Environment. Like, change your environment. The number one predictor of behavior and health is your environment, period, end of story, right? And if my choices are a result of the environment that I find myself in, and I have enough control over how I can shift my environment, then I statistically increase my likelihood of success by a huge degree if I do so, right? So many people wish that they were more disciplined when what they really need is a more disciplined environment. Like, if you want to eat low-fat whole food plants, if you want to eat a low-fat plant-based whole food diet 90% of the time, your environment better be 90% low-fat plant-based whole food diet. And if it is, it influences your opportunity to behave in that way to an unbelievable degree. If it's the easier and more repeatable thing to do, your likelihood of doing it goes through the roof. If you have to put in any amount of extra effort in order to achieve behavior that is aligned with your goals, it is going to be incredibly more difficult to do it, especially in the beginning. When the environment does not support your goals, only a very, very small percentage of people have the self-awareness and the willpower to outcompete an environment that does not support them. But when the environment is right, like Simon Sinek says, actually, when the environment is right, everyone has the capacity for remarkable change. The number one thing you can do right now is become very, very clear about how you are going to make the changes you want to see. Who are the experts? What does the knowledge say? What does the science say? How do I do this? And then how can I, in any way, shape, or form, shift my environment to be more supportive of those behaviors as much as possible? And then make it as enjoyable and easy as you possibly can over the course of time.
And I think for people that have gained a lot of weight, or maybe they've been bullied or been told that they were fat or whatever that comes along with people that might have diabetes or people that have copious amounts of weight to lose, you really have to learn to change the way you talk to yourself. Because I think what happens is our perception of who we really are at the core becomes hijacked based on the lies that people tell us, and then we believe those lies. So if somebody says, you're fat, you're always going to be fat, you're a loser, you're never going to see success, and then that happens every day, maybe while you're in school or for months at a time when you're in a toxic relationship or whatever it is, you start to believe that is truth, right? And it's not to say that you should blame that, but it's reality. And sometimes you need to become aware of how you're talking to yourself. And so if you can start to become aware of that and just say, like, wow, like from this day on, I'm going to be more intentional about paying attention to the way I talk to myself and just changing the way you talk to yourself. And instead of saying, like, I am fat, you could just say, like, I know right now I am not the healthiest version of myself, but I am going to do everything that I freaking can to fight to become the healthiest version of myself.
Yeah.
And that changes things.
You bring up a really good point about your inner critic, because typically your inner critic is a voice of the things that other people or society has told you in order to be acceptable, right? You have to be anything other than you are in order to be acceptable, and you believed it. And most of the time, your inner critic is absolutely lying to you, right? So for everyone on here, I want you guys to know you're not stupid. right? You're not worthless. You're not weak. You're not a burden. You're not crazy. Okay. You're not a freak. You're not alone, and you are worthy of change. Like, what if we stopped defining ourselves by what we struggle with? What if we gave ourselves permission and the space to explore our feelings with compassion? So instead of saying, I am depressed, I am sad, I am angry, I am stupid, I am lonely, what if it was, I feel depressed, I feel anxious and uncertain in this moment, I feel a lack of connection to people today, I feel uncomfortable in my body today, I feel a lack of confidence in what I'm doing right now. When it's a feeling, then it's an observation rather than an ownership. And so perhaps if we gave ourselves permission to see that these feelings are a reasonable response to life and what is happening in the moment, we would be able to explore them with greater compassion. So, because we are not what we feel, right? We are experiencing these feelings. And we are not broken because we feel because we're human. And that's what we do. We feel very, very deeply. And it makes sense. It's meaningful. It's reasonable. It's important. And it's incredibly important, especially in lifestyle change, to be aware of these feelings and be okay with it as much as you possibly can when appropriate. And if it's hard to do it alone, get support. I know my recovery did not happen alone. The story sort of reads like it did. But I'm telling you, the reason why I'm here today is because when those moments happened, when it got really hard and I was going to fall on my face, someone either caught me or picked me up. It's important to have someone you can do this with.
Okay, so let's go down this inner critic route because I love this concept here. Doug, tell me, what does your inner critic say to you today? What did it do before this podcast this morning?
So I want to share something really quick that I think is going to hopefully resonate with a lot of people, because I think everybody gets, like, a lot of people have this perception that when you start to make you take a step in the right direction, whether it's, you know, changing the way you eat or exercising or getting off drugs, and all of a sudden life becomes easy, right? No, like, life actually becomes harder, and you have to start to deal with the stuff that forced you to make those bad choices in the first place, right? And so I still struggle with, you're not enough, you're not going to make it, you're going to do, like, I still have those struggles. Or, you know, when I see somebody else who's doing something that I should be doing, or I'm like, man, I should be doing, like, it goes off all the time. But I think what's different now compared to what it was, you know, when I was in my unhealthy days, is the way I respond to it. It's like I just flip a switch and I'm able to get out of it fairly quickly. And it's not to say that I don't have days where I'm more in it than others, because I'm human, but I'm not going off and eating a cheeseburger every time my inner critic goes off. I'm not going and doing drugs every time my inner critic goes off. I'm more becoming aware and being like, why am I feeling this way? And then changing the story I'm telling myself and saying, no, you are enough. You're going to do amazing things. Let's freaking get after it. Like, get to the gym, like, do your whatever that's going to get me closer to wherever I want to go. So the inner critic is still there, and I believe the inner critic will always kind of be there. I think it's just the fact of life. You're going to have that person inside of you. Maybe that's the old version of you. Maybe it's the devil. I mean, whatever you believe, that's doubting you. But I love a challenge. I love giving life that look and being like, freaking watch me. Like, life, and I doubted myself so much growing up. People doubted me so much that I have gotten used to playing with my back against the wall and just knowing that even though life will get challenging, even though I will doubt myself at times, I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to give up. I'm going to continue to believe in myself. I'm going to continue to do the right things even when they're challenging, and I'll let the cards fall where they're intended to fall.
Yeah, I think the inner critic thing, I think that the most common thing about the inner critic in the human experience is that we tend to think that whatever we're dealing with is unique to us. And self-compassion starts with the understanding that that it is normal to struggle as a human. And so to be not normal is to be a normal human. And when it comes down to it, I think for me, and it's still today, is that there's this small voice in the back of my head that always says, hey, if you were to ever get really quiet and people were to really see you and really know you, they might not approve of you. And I think that that's what most people struggle with. I would even put it out there, that's what everybody struggles with. And it's okay, because humans crave approval because it makes us feel safe. There's a reasonable explanation for why this is so important to us. Human evolution, safety was dependent upon knowing someone was there to back you up if you got in trouble. We need this level of value that we can offer other people, and we have to constantly try and show it. And the ego wants to show up and show it how much more valuable you are than the person next to you, because if you're more valuable than the person next to you, more people will save your life if necessary than that person. This is evolutionary psychology. It's not malicious, but it's there. And we humans have evolved to live in, tribes of 30 to 100. We were never supposed to live with the voices of 1 million people in our face every single day. And now it's become a bigger problem than it's ever been, because we're confronted with other people's inner critic trying to outdo your value on a daily basis. And it's okay. This is not you going wrong. This is not psychology. This is not this is not pathology. This is not crazy. This is a reasonable response to human nature existing in a time where we were never supposed to know everybody else's problems.
So I actually see a theme emerging here, which is that, Adam, you're saying that, like, your inner critic, you're only as good as your inner critic will allow you to be, right? And now you're saying that you're only as good as the inner critics of everyone else around you will allow you to be, right? And in today's world, where we're sort of confronted with social media and a lot of information and a lot of content coming at us, when you're constantly, being reminded of these sort of negative, statements, then they can kind of become pervasive and they can get inside of your head. And Doug, you said earlier in this podcast that at the very beginning, you said, you know what, I was overfat physically, mentally, emotionally, nutritionally, right? And so it's the same concept here, which is that when the world kind of becomes too much, oftentimes it requires just like completely simplifying the process and getting in touch with that inner self to be like, who am I? What do I believe? And what do I actually want to create for myself? How do I change the paradigm so that I can move in the forward direction and do it in a way where I can repeat that behavior today, tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, and so on. Right?
I think one of the things that can be very beneficial, at least in my own experience, is having like a when life works list. Because I feel like whenever I'm out of alignment, whenever I'm off track, whenever I'm struggling, typically I'm not doing the things that's on that list. So for me, it could be, exercising 5-6 days a week, could be the way I eat, could be meditating a few times a week or daily or whatever consistency I'm doing, or the people I'm hanging out. I go on and on. That's me, because I think it at least gives you like a North Star to come back to when you're feeling off and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling quote unquote overstimulated or overfat from all the noise that's coming in. And the acceptance, like Adam touched on a good point, is like knowing that we're not alone. Like everybody goes through it. And like one of the things that I always say to people when they're having a bad day or they're in a rut is, number one, like, be aware, like, what is it you're going through? Like, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Now, again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just speaking for what works for me. Are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? And then number two, the second A is the most important, and it's acceptance, like knowing it's okay. It's a normal part of life, depending on what you're going through, to go through that, because that's what breaks people. A lot of people, when they feel that way, it stops there for them and they spiral down. Why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? They're not feeling that way. She's not feeling that way. He's not feeling that way. And then they start to make these unhealthy choices to cope with the fact that they're ashamed of the state that they're in. So once you accept it, again, it comes back to what are some things you can do to make you feel better in that moment that are aligned with the highest version of yourself. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's calling a friend. Maybe it's listening to your favorite song. Whatever it is, like, change the channel. And then you start to rewire your brain. You start to like develop these new coping strategies where now second nature for you isn't to go eat like a 12-pack of donuts or drink a 12-pack of beer when you're struggling. Second nature might be to go for a walk with your dog. Second nature might be to call somebody like Cyrus or Adam when you're struggling. Second nature might be to watch a funny movie. Now what you've done is you've done two things. You've made yourself feel better because you're doing something that actually will make you feel better. And then the second thing is you are developing confidence in yourself and a belief in yourself that you don't have to turn to something unhealthy every time you're feeling unhealthy.
Yeah. I think it's, why is this a reasonable response to life?
Right.
Right. Because we unfortunately, we've been sold a story for so long that, depression and anxiety, that these are a pathological condition, right? That brain chemistry is the cause of it all. And unfortunately, that sends a very unintended, I think, but still very serious message. Unintended and very serious message, which is that your pain means nothing. That you're depressed because of your brain chemistry, not because of what's happened to you. And this can be a lot of the times what people are experiencing when they're making lifestyle change when they're diabetic is they go, oh, I'm diabetic because of my genetics, or I'm diabetic because it runs in my family. No. I'm sorry. The good news is it's not. The good news is you're diabetic because it is a very reasonable response to an abnormal way of living. And it's okay because you didn't know any better. You're still doing the best you could at every moment in your life to sometimes deal with discomfort and situations and pain that you didn't know how to solve. And this was a cheeseburger was a phenomenal solution in that moment. And you didn't know any other way to do it. And now you found yourself in a situation that, again, is painful and you don't know the solution to. And somebody is now telling you it's not your fault because it's your genetics, which is a really unfortunate message because you are not the cause, you're not the solution. But when it is a response to life and how you're living it, you have full opportunity to change how you're living your life and reap the benefits of the, again, reasonable response to those changes, which we know if you adopt a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet in an insulin-resistant state, the reasonable response is to gain insulin sensitivity, period, end of story. How you can do that? Make that easier every day. Make changes to your environment to make it more repeatable every single day. Make it as obvious as you can, right? That this is what you're going to do. Don't wait the day of to decide how you're going to do it. Have that planned. Have 7 days planned. So you get up and you're like, breakfast, got it, done, period, end of story. I'm having oats, I'm having fruit, I'm having whatever it is, right? Lunch, it's already planned. I'm not thinking about it. I'm going into the kitchen to accomplish it, not figure it out. And continue to do that. This isn't, if we don't have to play the game of chance in this, don't play it. All right? If it can be a predetermined choice, play that game. That's the game that's going to win every single time.
That's a great it's a really good point, actually, because you're basically saying, like, don't leave it to chance. Make the obvious choice. Make the reasonable choice, the simplest choice, so that you don't feel like you're swimming uphill, like you're fighting anything. For you, Adam, I know what your simple choice is. It's wake up in the morning and eat a bowl of oatmeal. I mean, you've literally been doing that every single day of your life for the last 10 years. And it gets you incredible results. I'm not even joking when I say that, right? Doug, let's go backwards in time. When you were in jail and you adopted this fitness regimen because your cellmate had basically taken you under his wing and basically was like, hey, listen, you're going to start working out and I'm going to like encourage you to become a new version of yourself that you don't even know is possible, right? How, in that situation, you chose that fitness was going to be your tool, that fitness was going to be the thing that you did in order to convert the old you into the newer you and the new you that you eventually became. So is it true that like fitness at that time in life was just something that was such an obvious choice for you that there was just no question about doing it and it was accessible and it was there and you just did it? Or was it more complex from a psychological perspective?
Oh, it was way more complex because fitness is something I had never really formally done. And I was the guy that couldn't even do a push-up from my knees or couldn't even walk up and down the steps without, because I was smoking.
That is crazy for me to think of because I've worked out with you. And, like, the idea of you not being able to do a push-up just blows my mind.
and so, yeah, it was so much more complex than that. But what happened was, I think in life, confidence isn't built when you get to, like, the top of a mountain. It's built continuing to get up and believe in yourself each time you fall. And so for some reason, this guy believed in me when I collapsed to the ground and was like, I'm going to train you. And so where I'm going with this is I think a lot of times when people have their face down in the mud, they can't see anything. It helps to have that person just pull you up by the back of your head so you can just see just a little bit of light. And then when you see that little bit of light, you lean into that light, and then more light starts to appear, more light starts to appear, more light starts to appear. So when I collapsed and my cellmate agreed to train me, like I was just committed to doing one push-up, like from my knees. And then that one push-up led to one for my feet and 2 and 3 and so on. And then I started to feel this endorphin rush and the sense of achievement, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, having discipline, doing the things that I knew I should have been doing all along. I knew I should have been taking better care of myself. I knew it all along. I just didn't have the confidence to do so. So once I was able to start doing 8 push-ups, 2 push-ups, 3 push-ups, I started to feel better about myself. And I was like, wow, I need to do more of what makes me feel better about myself. Like your brain, your brain is smart. If it's something that you do makes your brain feel good, it's going to want more of that. And then fitness did become the obvious thing eventually after I was able to do some push-ups and saw some changes mentally, emotionally, psychologically, physically. And that became the catalyst for many of the other changes that I made in my life, because it gave me all this confidence and belief in myself, and I developed who I wanted to become as a person, all those things. And then it spilled into how I ate. It spilled into who I surrounded myself with. It spilled into the choices I made professionally and personally. I mean, it was magical for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you were telling your story, when I was listening to the Rich Roll podcast, and I was sort of like trying to put myself into your shoes at that time in life, and having to sort of like think about making this psychological and physical transformation, and I commend you. I commend you for making such a massive transformation. And the nice thing is that you had somebody to guide you, and you had somebody to basically hold your hand and basically say, listen, I'm going to take you underneath my wing and I'm going to show you the path, right? It's your choice as to whether you want to do this path, but I'm going to strongly encourage you to do it. Adam, you also had the same thing. When you attempted to commit suicide and it didn't work, your parents came to your rescue. They took you over to Rip Esselstyn's retreat. All of a sudden you started to learn from him, and then you basically were like, you know what? This is the path. So somebody else was helping you out along the way to push you down the path and sort of encourage you to move in the direction of positive change, right? So what would you guys say suppose somebody lives alone? They don't really have a strong support network. Maybe they don't have any family members that live nearby them. They're in an environment that's sort of, reinforcing negative beliefs. What can someone do in that situation when you're saying, okay, change your environment, right? And they're like, well, how do I change my environment? What are you talking about? I have to move cities? I got to move to a different location? What's a simple way to change your environment without having to change too much?
Yeah, that's the toughest question is, and when we say change your environment, it doesn't necessarily mean your physical location, right? It could be your nutrition environment. It could be your opportunity to move your body easier, right? Can you order some resistance bands if you have the financial means and it's appropriate for you, depending on, what you're physically capable of? How can you make it that much easier so that, if you're watching TV, every time there's a commercial, you go and you do a set of something, or, you make sure that, hey, maybe I don't have the ability to buy, a bunch of organic, fresh produce, but I can get potatoes and beans for really, really cheap. And I know that those are healing. And so I'm just going to eat those foods more, right? How do I just do more of the healing thing and continue to make that your goal over the course of time, right? It's not about being 100%, but it's not about getting it 100% right. It's about being 100% committed to doing the best you can with what's available and what's appropriate, and continuing to push yourself a little bit further every single day. Like, one of the things I'll tell people is, like, I'm so not a fan of like the abstinence method. Like, the abstinence as an idea, of course, when within recovery, within the first year, it's best to be abstinent from your substance because your brain has a lot of healing to do. But like, human beings are imperfect by nature, and it's hard for us to feel safe when anything less than perfect is considered a failure, right? If you do it 90% of the time, that's an A. I don't need you to get 100% to be a straight A student, but you need to do it as much as you can 90% of the time. That's what it's going to require.
Okay, so the trick here is that you don't have to become 100% perfect right off the bat, but you do have to commit. You do have to fully commit at all stages in this process and decide that you're going to give this your full commitment so that you can actually make the step in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say, like, no one's coming to save you. I mean, ultimately, both Adam and I in our stories, like, yeah, we had somebody come and kind of give us a leg up to get us started, but we still had to make that decision to see it through and stick with it. Like, it could have been easy for me to sit there and cry in the corner. Like, that's what I was doing during my first few weeks in jail. I was blaming everybody. I was pessimistic, saying woe is me, being the victim, and that got me nowhere. And I think the moment you you give the power to somebody else, you lose immediately, because the power is within you. And the other thing I'll say is you have to do what's best with what you have. Like when I was in jail, I think about like how my nutrition was. Like obviously I wasn't eating plant-based or paleo or some of these other, like, you know, more like whatever, depending on what camp you fall in, these quote unquote perfect health plans or food plans. It was more like, Doug, no white bread at dinner, no sweets. It was just very simple. Like, here, still eat this, still eat that. But it was just trying to like do the best with what I had, and then building off of that. And then once I developed the self-confidence, because again, nutrition, it's not about the food. It's about the confidence to stick with something it's hard for you, and it's changing. It's a change for you. So once I developed the discipline and the ability to change what I was eating and say no to certain things and embrace some of the other things that were there, it became a habit for me. So that when I got out and I switched to healthier options, I had already worked that muscle before. So I had started to develop some strength in that area of my life, which made that decision easier. But again, like if you're somebody who's by yourself right now and you have nobody, start with the smallest possible wins you can. If you're somebody who hasn't walked in 20 years, get out there for 5 minutes and walk. Go for a 5-minute walk. Come back inside. Write down how you feel, right? Odds are you'll probably feel pretty good. Do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And sure enough, a week will go by, and you'll be like, wow, I've walked 5 minutes every single day this week, which I haven't done in years. What's your brain and body going to want? More of that. 7-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk. And then 3 months are going to go by, and you've ran a 5K. Where did that start? With a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, guys, I got to head out. Yeah, I got to head out. I'll let you guys finish this conversation.
All right, cool. Thanks, Adam. Yes. So what I love about that is that basically you're educating people about taking baby steps, and the power of taking a tiny little step in one direction can lead to the same step the next day, the same step the next day, maybe even a little bit of a larger step and a larger step. And before you know it, you're miles away from where you began. And all you had to do was really make a tiny step 1,000 times, or not even 1,000 times, hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Right?
Because could you imagine when I got out of jail and somebody came to me and said, all right, Doug, I want you to share your story on a podcast or on a media outlet. I want you to write a book. I'd be like, no way. I'm never going to do that ever. And I would have never done that, right? But what happened was I started to continue to stack these small wins, right? I got out, stayed on the workout plan, was able to work my way up to doing more push-ups, running a little bit more outside, doing different exercises in the gym. I actually built confidence enough to actually join a gym for the first time in my life and actually pay for a membership, you know. And then from there, I started to learn different exercises, started to read more about nutrition, more about exercise programming, more about like what it would take to become a personal trainer. Then I became a trainer. Then once I became a trainer, I started to build confidence in helping other people lose weight and developed rapport with my clients. And then I started to share my story. And then you could see where I'm going with this. I started stacking these wins and then started to share my story. And then I was like, oh, like now I'm going to write the judge for a letter for modification of my sentence because I completed all the stipulations he gave me when I went to court on my felony drug charges. Let's go to court. Then he took the felony conviction off my record. Then I was like, oh, wow, I never thought that this would happen. Let's write a book. And then I just kept going with it. And that's just what I think I don't care if you're trying to lose weight. I don't care if you're trying to beat addiction. I don't care if you're trying to make any kind of change in your life. You have to start small. I mean, and it's okay to have big goals. I still have big goals now, like of where I want to go. But you don't ever see any successful person who has these big, audacious goals not do the simple things every single day that lead up to those big goals.
Okay, so I love what you just said here because you refer to it as stacking small wins. And when you stack a small win, it can be a sort of like very emotionally engaging and inspiring way to make a big change feel like just a tiny change, right? Because all you got to do is make the small change. You just have to repeat that over and over and over again. And the wins, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have to be physical wins. They could be emotional wins. They could be mental wins. They could just be literally thinking about yourself in a different light, being more positive to yourself and communicating something similar to someone else. And it's like when you make these small positive changes, all of a sudden it's like this claustrophobic world of, okay, I have chronic disease, I have diabetes, I don't know what to do, I'm taking a lot of medications, I feel bad. All of a sudden, that tiny claustrophobic world can start to feel just a little bit bigger. And then as that world gets a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger, all of a sudden this large pressure relief valve is lifted off of you. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're just like, man, this world really is a fantastic place. And I can accomplish so much. But it all starts with taking this like tiny little step that really can lead to a much bigger change down the road.
I think any small win just comes down to making a decision that's aligned with where you really want to go in your life and who you actually want to become and what you actually believe about yourself to be true. And it could be as simple like in the nutrition space is saying no to a donut that you might have said yes to in the past. But even if we just take the nutrition and the health aspect of it out, maybe it's just you writing down something you're grateful for every single day. Because I think when any of us are trying to make a change that's tough, one of the first things we always go to is what we don't have in life, or the things that we haven't achieved. Oh, I haven't achieved this weight loss goal, or I haven't got this money that I wanted, or I don't have this relationship, or I haven't done this or done that. And what's it going to do to your brain or to yourself if you just focus solely on the things that you don't have in life and all the negative things that you currently have? You're going to be super upset with yourself, right? So gratitude,
absolutely.
When you just very simply say, I'm grateful that I still have the ability to fight for my health. I'm grateful that I have two people that are in my accountability group that I'm really aligning with. I'm grateful that my dog comes home and is happy, or when I come home, my dog is happy to see me. I'm grateful that I still have both legs so I can go for a walk when I'm stressed. Like, it doesn't have to be anything substantial, but you just start to change the story you tell yourself. Change that story, because if the story in your head is focused on what you don't have in your life, what you haven't accomplished, all the negative things, the things that you have more of that you don't want, then you're going to be very upset all the time if that's what you focus on. And that's
Absolutely.
a huge win. If you can adopt that, some call it an attitude of gratitude, others might call it a practice. That small win over time is going to add up into a massive win, because you're going to now teach yourself to be thankful for the little things in life when things are hard. And we saw that a lot during the lockdowns, right? Where you really had to be mindful of the positives in your life, the things that you do had that were going for you that were good, or you could have lost yourself or lost your mind. And a lot of people did, and that's okay. I mean, with everything going on. But what I am saying, in order to survive, to give yourself a shot at surviving situations like that, you have to focus on the things that you do have in your life that are meaningful to you, that make you feel better, and that are positive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So let me ask you this. What are you focusing on right now in life? You've accomplished so much, but yet I'm sure you're still very, very focused on some particular aspect of your life. So what is it?
I mean, right now it's just focusing on how can I continue to get my message out there? How can I continue to help people? How can I continue to inspire people to make the most of their second chance, and essentially at the end of the day use adversity to their advantage? And not to say that every hardship in your life you're all of a sudden going to catapult and you're going to be this ultra successful person right after it happens. No, but more or less what my goal is, other than having people look back and accept the fact that a lot of their biggest blessings came from the greatest setbacks, is how can people, when they hit times of hardship, when they hit these obstacles, how can they mitigate that? Because what breaks people, Cyrus, isn't the adversity itself. It's how people respond to the adversity that breaks them. I look at myself and my own experience, like I said at the beginning of our conversation. Like, what broke me wasn't the divorce, it wasn't the bullying, it wasn't the abuse, it wasn't not making the teams, the rejection by the girls, whatever it was. While all that sucked and it was horrible and I wish no one would ever go through that, what really made my life horrible was the choices that I made in response to those situations. So it's through my podcast or even through conversations like this, or when I'm just talking to anybody in the street or on social media, wherever it is, like, what are some tools people can have so that when they are having a bad day or they are in a rut or they are experiencing something that's challenging, how can they use that time to grow stronger and grow wiser and become a better version of themselves? Because like I said, I think earlier in our conversation, like I want people to know this actually. Like whatever weight you're trying to lose, whatever fitness goals you're trying to achieve, whatever diseases you're trying to reverse, achieving those isn't going to grant you confidence forever. I can't 100% guarantee that, but I can pretty much guarantee that because I've been somebody who has, even though I've overcome the addictions and I'm in recovery and I've lost a bunch of weight, it didn't grant me eternal confidence forever. What helps me with confidence and what helps a lot of other people is continuing to get back up each time you fall. Continuing to believe in yourself even when the odds are so stacked against you. Continuing to believe that you're going to get through times that aren't easy when they come, no matter what the case is. That's where confidence in yourself is built. Because it's easy to be confident when things are good, right? When the weight comes off and the scale's moving and everything's flowing, it's super easy to be confident, right? Relationships are on fire. It's awesome. But where the confidence is truly built and you build that raw foundation of confidence is during the challenging times, during the times when things just aren't feeling so good. And maybe there's a relationship in your life that is suffering, or maybe the scale isn't moving, or you're having some aches and pains, or you're not sleeping. That's what separates people from making it and not making it is being able to believe in yourself, stay confident, and staying true to who you are and what you want to achieve during those times of despair, when you're during your transformation, during the times where that scale isn't moving, during the times where maybe you slipped up on your plan for 3 days, during those times where you got into a fight with somebody you care about. The more you can learn to mitigate that and stay optimistic. Again, not everything's going to be positive in your life, but stay optimistic about where you're going. You'll win because you're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel more confident, and you're going to be able to put your head on the pillow at night and say, you know what? Even though today might not have been my best day, or even though today was great, or whatever, however your day is, at least I knew that I believed in myself enough to give it my best, kept trying, and did the thing that I knew I should have been doing, even when things weren't so easy.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, it's almost easier said than done. But at the same time, when the world looks dark, when your world feels claustrophobic, those are the times when the most focus and the most inspiration is required in order to get you to feel just a little bit less frustrated and a little bit more optimistic. So you're absolutely right in the sense that that's required in order to actually make you feel like a better person and actually keep you on the path towards reversing any metabolic disease, losing weight, gaining more energy, and beyond. But it is true that, we're all human, and it can be difficult in those times when the world looks the darkest to actually continue to make that effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what I think Adam and I are both saying earlier in our conversation with the acceptance piece, and knowing that it's okay if your house is a little burned out, right? It's okay that it's a little dark. It's okay that things are not so good. But, if you had a house that was traditionally fully lit and a light bulb burns out, would you just go and bash every light in your house? No. You wouldn't, just because one bulb's out. No, you would do what you needed to do, go change the bulb, and you'd figure out how to get that part of your house lit back up. It's the same thing in life, right? Even though right now, or maybe in the future or in the past or whatever, you're experiencing a dark moment, it's okay. But you can't, and it's easier said than done, you're right, but there is no other way out than to say, like, what can I control in these moments? Like, what can I control? What can I do? What actions can I take to move towards a solution? What can I do to improve the way I feel? Who can I call? What can I listen to? What can I read? What can I do to get my mind off of this? And just know that you got to ride that wave sometimes. And you got to know that things will get better. They will. I mean, there's no guarantee when, there's no guarantee how, but just doing the things that you know are aligned, like I said, with the highest version of yourself to help you feel better in that moment, staying true to who you are, focusing on how far you've come, not how far you have to go. All those things might not guarantee you that you'll get to that place of light, but it sure gives you a shot. And that's all that matters. And the last thing I'll say is like, you know, in life, if somebody were to come up to you, or, you know, in real life, I should say, if somebody were to come up to you, Cyrus, and just punch you in the face, I guarantee you wouldn't just sit there and let that person just continue to just pummel you and pummel you and pummel you and pummel you. You do something, right, to defend yourself.
I sure hope so.
Right. But in life, we let life beat the living crap out of us. And we sometimes even hit ourselves during that fight, don't we? With our decisions we make and the actions we take in response to that.
No doubt. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's a good point.
And so sometimes you got to put your dukes up and just keep fighting. And it might not mean that you take some, you know, massive step. It could just be maybe just practicing the pause and just sitting in silence for a little bit, or watching a movie, or going for a walk, or going for a hike, or writing down some things you're grateful for. I mean, again, if you're in a dark spot, it comes down to belief. It comes down to making simple choices and simple changes in your life. And it comes down to who you surround yourself with, what you ingest through, you know, what you listen to, what you watch, what you read, that sort of thing. And then just not beating yourself up too much and just continuing to get back up every time you fall. And again, that's just the only way out. That's the only way out. That's it.
Doug, this has been a super enlightening conversation. I feel like we could go on for hours. How do people learn more about you? Where are they going to follow you online? And what can they do to pick up one of your books in order to really like start to change the way that they think for the better?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed this conversation too. And you're right. We could definitely talk about this forever. I love talking about these topics because it's so important, especially now with what's going on in recent times. So to find out more about me, you can just go to dougbopst.com, and my books are there. There's links to more interviews that I've done. And then if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called The Adversity Advantage. It's wherever you listen to podcasts, it's there, or you can go to adversityadvantagepodcast.com. And then my books are available on Amazon, or like I said, through my site. And I'm pretty active on Instagram, so if you want to follow me there, and you can pick up more of my content and see more what I'm about there as well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the adversity advantage, I love the way you frame that, actually, because it's, you know, we tell people this all the time, that adversity can feel dark and claustrophobic, but adversity is actually an unfair advantage that you have against the rest of the world. So if you really embrace this adversity, you find yourself in a deep, dark place, you find yourself at rock bottom, great, congratulations. That's the motivation to start changing for the better into the future. So your podcast is fantastic. Thank you for interviewing me a couple months ago. I think that was fantastic. And for those of you who are interested in following Doug, his last name is spelled Bopst. It's Bopst, which is like a bunch of consonants in a row. But yeah, so if you look for him on Amazon, go read some of his books, go follow the Adversity Advantage podcast. And Doug, it was a pleasure having you. Hopefully we'll have you again sometime real soon.
Cyrus, thanks, man. It's been awesome.